Okay, so what are we drinking today, Jamie?
We are drinking Death Wish Coffee Company's pumpkin chai coffee.
Which I think is our second Death Wish.
Definitely smell pumpkin.
Like
chai.
our third or fourth.
Or smell chai.
I smell a little pumpkin.
Just cream and sugar, right?
It's good.
I'm using just cream. No
Jim
sugar.
and I are using just cream.
What do you guys think? I'm going to say,
I like it.
out of 5, I'm going to say 4.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's good
It
coffee.
we're shooting this in fall. Feels very
Smooth.
festive.
Mhm.
Yes.
I could drink this and enjoy it, you know?
I'm going to say 4. Anybody else?
Can I taste that out of yours?
Oh. Uh-oh.
A 4.
I don't think my cup's doing it.
Everybody says 4 so far. So
I'm going to say 3. It's
What?
kind of just, I don't
Let me
really
try
get
yours.
any of the flavors.
Maybe it's the lack of sugar.
By the way, quickly while Jim's tasting this, these are the Icosa Brew House Avency cups. You can go to icosabrewhouse.com. You can put in coupon code FAMILYBREW, all one word, lowercase, and get a 15% off your purchase. But if you haven't tried these, you should.
That one definitely has less flavor,
Yeah.
like provides less flavor.
It's still smooth.
This
okay.
is much better.
Alrighty.
4443, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you guys ever had an instance where you had to ask your kids, like, what were you thinking? What were you thinking?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day.
So-
What on earth is going through your head?
Let me give you a most recent one I could think of, and then we'll get into what we're going to talk about. So my son, I bought this contraption. We have some fruit trees we planted, and I bought this contraption that would water the roots. So it's a very sharp metal piece that you hook the hose to, and you poke it down in, and it like deep waters your trees. Jamie called me and told me our son used this root watering tool to impale his foot one afternoon after playing with it. Found it in the front yard where I left it, and I would say it's not. I mean, it's not sharp enough you could like throw it at a dartboard, but it's pointed, and you know, and we ended up not needing stitches. It was just kind of a somewhat of an open wound and very bruised and stuff. And I just remember thinking like, how did you not pick that up and go, that's pointed. I'm not going to jam it in the ground at full force
Just gonna
with
jam this into
barefoot,
my
you know?
foot. Yeah.
I just
Did
remember
get
having
a-
to,
Did get a tetanus shot.
yeah, I did get a tetanus shot. So, and I just remember having to ask him, like, dude, what part of that did you not think was a bad idea? And so there are instances like that, but I want to launch into just talking about, like, do we know, you know, that's just kind of a funny example, but do we know what our kids are thinking most of the time? Do we have any idea, and is it important to kind of know that?
Well, I think it's definitely important to know that, right? Like, it is, but it's impossible to know. You know, I think in those moments I'm typically just trying to remember what I was thinking at that
Right.
age, right? What was going through my mind? Like, most of the time, I'm like, like there's nothing going on up there. And you just think it would be fun, or you think you're like nothing's going to happen. Like, for some reason, I just never thought about the consequences of what I was going to do. You know, I hurt my younger brother several times, probably out of some sort of jealousy or something. But, you know, I remember doing the action, but I don't remember thinking about what would happen, you know, if I had done that. So, I don't know. I guess I'd try to go back there, but.
I just want to throw this in there really quick. I have noticed from both my childhood and raising children that there's a little bit of a difference between boys and girls, though, in that regard.
Huge.
Because our daughter is more calculated in things, or even if she makes a mistake where you're like, what were you thinking? If you talk her through it, she typically doesn't really do that again. Or she'll definitely, like, I'll hear her tell her sibling, don't do that because ABC or whatever it is. Like, she likes the checklist, the process, the, you know, key phrases, all those things. And then me as a kid, I definitely got nowhere near as many injuries as my brother did. Like, I was just not as, and we still did same, you know, dirt biking and hiking and those things together. I just was a little more calculated in my movements before I did them, or a little slower going than I'll see what happens and then deal with it later. I wasn't like that as much. So
Does that calculation turn into like premeditation later on? Like, I feel like our daughter, that's definitely true what you're saying. Like, I feel like our son is like a jump first, think later type guy. And our daughter is not, but she's also the more like, I don't know if conniving is too harsh of a word, but she's the one that would like premeditate a way to like get back at her brother, like think things through.
She can manipulate.
She'll think
already,
ahead, and sometimes
all
that's
that.
negative. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, crime of passion versus premeditated murder. Like what?
Right. Yeah. So what about like just on a deeper level? Like, is it important to figure out what our kids are thinking, what's going through their minds at different times, and what's really going on? And do they communicate that, or we have to fish for that?
I definitely find that a frustrating parenting moment because I regularly will ask one of them, like, why did you do that? And my daughter, her standard answer is, I don't know. She just automatically with the I don't know. And I said, well, you do know. And I need you to think about, like, why was that not a good idea? Or why did you do that to your brother or whatever? Like, we need to think about it and talk about what happened. I don't know is not like this, like, way to get out of everything. So, but sometimes it's like she really doesn't know, but sometimes it's just a lazy response, I think.
The phrase that's been common in our house lately is, I didn't mean to. What do you mean you didn't mean to? What did you mean to do exactly? Because you still took an action on purpose. You didn't mean for that outcome.
Right.
Or, and so, yeah, we've had those conversations quite a bit lately.
Yeah. It was an accident. Well,
Yeah,
this is the third time this week.
Yeah. But on a note, aside from just strictly behavioral, because obviously I don't think you mean just that, right? We've tried to teach our daughter to express her feelings verbally instead of just an emotional reaction that causes her to do something, you know what I mean? So I will say that, yes, we want to know what she's thinking. Like, we try to tune in more when she's exhibiting, like, grumpiness or agitation or something. We've been trying to sit down with her more so that we do know what's going on with her that day, so she knows that she doesn't have to act out to get... It's like she knows she's needing something, but she does not express it, so it's just coming out in frustration. And so, yes, I think it's important to know what's going on. Their feelings, not necessarily just what they're thinking, but their general just, what are they feeling, physically too.
Yeah, on the flip side of that, I feel like, I don't know, there's definitely times just recently with our daughter where she has shown kind of like this desire for more time. Especially with me. I don't know if it's just because of some of the changes that we've had going on in the family lately.
More one-on-one time?
Yeah, more one-on-one time, which I've tried to give her. We went out for a movie together, just her and me, and we spent time, and it was great. But it's like it's not enough. She has to have more. So the other day, she's following me around the house, and she's asking me all these questions. Would you still love me this? Would you still love me that? Da da da. And she finally asked me, like, would you still love me if I killed myself? And I'm like, that's a question that's going to stop you from doing whatever you're doing. And I turn around like, what are you asking me that question for? And I don't think that she fully understood the gravity of what she was talking about. Because I pressed her really hard. What are you talking about? Like, what's going on? Why would you ask me that? And she started to cry, and I don't know was the answer. Like, I don't know do you even know what that means? And so I feel like sometimes, I don't know. You just they are trying to tell you something, even though they don't know how. I don't know exactly what she's trying to say. Obviously, she wants more time. She wants more time from me specifically. I have 3 children. We have 3 children, and I got to divide that time up somewhat equally. And I'm trying, but like, how do you manage that? How do we take those kind of super deep questions and like, holy cow, man, that's a scary one for me. Like,
I wonder if that was her way of saying, is there anything I could do that would make you not love me?
Yeah.
Like, I'll just keep going more serious till he says no, to try to see what,
And I mean, how many times do I have to say no? Like, if it's no, then nothing would ever make me stop. But then she went all the way to the top, and I'm like, I kind of got frustrated because, recently I've had a friend who just went through that, and he lost his daughter, and it's heartbreaking. Like, there's nothing that you can do to fix that for them. There's no bringing that back, no changing that. And so, yeah, it's like, now I'm looking at my 8-year-old daughter, and I'm really wondering, like, what's going through her mind? Why would she ask a question so serious at 8 years old? So I don't know that we can know exactly. We can try to kind of key in, but I'm afraid that, okay, maybe I'm over reading this. Maybe she's just saying things
Something I also kind of noticed too is evaluating, like when we do ask her questions, she enjoys those conversations. So you can see her kind of continue to go more, like you said, right? Like she's the calculated one. She's always thinking, she's always processing those things. So I think that sometimes she might be, if I say these things, the conversation will go on longer.
I get some undivided
focus. And I'm aware she's our A, middle child, and B, only daughter. So that puts her in a rough spot, I guess, so to speak. But what bothered me, I guess, about that particular situation is she asked that question after she had gotten her daddy-daughter day, after I had made sure to take time the last few days every day to give her specific time, even in the activities that I don't like. And so that's what kind of worried me, I guess, a little bit, was like, okay, I don't know what else to do. Yeah. I don't know what I don't know. Anyway, yeah. I don't know what she might be. I don't know if she's directly thinking anything or just feeling overwhelmed, maybe, or something that she doesn't know herself how to pinpoint.
Yeah.
And
again, these are all just our best guess. You know,
yeah,
like we don't know. So, like I said at the beginning, I don't think that we can know what's going through their mind because on some level, I don't think that they know how to tell you.
Sure.
Right.
Or they know how to sort.
So it could be age specific, right? And you get into older kids, they may know more how to tell you. They just don't want to, right? You said something. I don't want to go too far off topic. But you said something I wanted to ask you. You were saying you have 3 kids and you're trying to figure out how to give like one-on-one time to each of them. Does it feel like do you try to tell yourself I got to give 33 and a third, 33 and a third, or does it feel like during seasons like this one may need more, this one may need more?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. But for me, it's kind of hard. We have a 10-year-old son, and I feel like he's in that turning point now from child to adolescent, right? And I feel more drawn to kind of leading him through that, right? Even though he's, less than interested, he wants to do whatever he wants to do. But it's like, as I feel drawn to that, like she is pulling me in a total opposite direction. And in the midst of all of that, we have a toddler who's screaming 95% of the time. So
okay, that's a little dramatic.
Okay, 65% of the time. Regardless.
The rest of the time he yells and doesn't scream.
Yeah, exactly. Regardless, it's like I feel like I need to be here. She's telling me I need you or I want you here. And then we have one who's just going to take the attention, right? Like, that's just going to happen. So now how do we divide that?
Well, I find it kind of funny. Sorry, we'll get back to your...
It's okay.
...straight way. But the older one that's, like, not asking you for it is the one that you feel more drawn to come towards. And so...
That's a good point.
But I think it's more from what we observe with him.
Right.
Because there's just some direction he just needs right now that I know we're both aware of, that he's not aware of, if that makes sense. And then our daughter, like, I think that she's feeling something. I don't know if it's a pre-puberty thing, or if it's just middle child, or if it's just, like you said, the weight of kind of the changes in our own life that's been going on. And maybe that's why she knows you're her safe space. She knows that you always come and rescue. You always have the answers. So maybe that's just what it is, base level. You know?
Maybe.
It's funny, I hear parents of teenagers say, like, my kids barely even talk to me anymore. I've had so many people that are ahead of us on the road. They're like, get ready. They're not going to want to hug you. They're not going to want to talk to you. You're going to say, how's it going? You're going to get one-word answers and stuff. And I remember when we were raising, like, toddlers through, like, 10 years, I'm like, yeah, right. Our kids won't stop talking. Like, I come home and I swear they don't breathe. They just start, like, rattling off, like, what I missed during the last 8 hours and stuff. And so I definitely think there's, like, an age component to this, right, where you might, when your kids are younger, they're willing to be more, even if it's not deep stuff, they're willing to share more. Whereas as they get older, they start to like internalize stuff and maybe they want to share with their friends now, not with their dad or with their mom.
That's true. I have to wonder on that note if there's any difference there, because I had a coworker of mine actually just bring that up, said, hey man, your daughter's right there. She's right there. Like, I remember when my daughter, I'd come home and she'd be crying and, Daddy, you're so happy. And now, she barely talks to me. And he's like, she's right there. And it made me think, because I'm like, I come home and I sit down on the couch and all the kids just pile on top of me.
Including the dog.
You're the superhero.
Yeah, I
that showed
cannot
up.
breathe, you know,
Yeah.
and I need a little space, and I get frustrated.
Yeah.
And then they get like, "Oh, why are you snapping at us?" I'm like, yeah, it's so now I'm thinking in my head like, "Gosh, man, maybe
You should enjoy it before
I
it's
should
gone.
enjoy it." But I have to wonder if there really is that much of a difference when you homeschool, because they don't have those outside influences,
Gotcha,
right?
gotcha.
Like she doesn't have the social influence of these other girls who are, you know, maybe they're more interested in other things. Instead, the kids group is going to be us, you know,
Right.
like, so do you really grow that far apart even in the teenage years if you are the group?
Yeah, it's a good point. A good
I
question.
will say from just the experience in our church's co-op that even the older teenagers, when they go on the field trips with us, they genuinely seem happy to be there. Like there's the handful of them that are like, oh, why? But most of them are there and they're helping. They're getting their hands dirty with the little kids. They're hugging their mom and they're like 15, 16. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So
Yeah.
And maybe that switch still flips, but it's later.
Yeah.
As they're
maybe.
older, even older. I don't know.
I kind of wonder if, like, you got to think in that preteen, teenage switch, that's when anxiety starts popping in. That's when all these new emotions, right? And then, you know, is it better managed by a child who feels like they have open communication with their parents all the time because they're around them all the time? You know,
I think it's not always just the time. Well, I mean, it's the time, but when there's an issue, you get to deal with it right then instead of waiting until they've had all their peers or even their teachers' opinions and then they come home. You know what I mean? And then you have to kind of sort through all that information. Instead, when there's an issue, we get to deal with it right then and there. And so I think that's just kind of logistically just a benefit.
yeah.
So you feel similar, being the homeschool mom?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't grow up being homeschooled or knowing people that were homeschooled. So this is all kind of like, you know, learn as we go type thing. Like how.
And we should just say, for the record, how many people went to
change
public school?
Everybody.
Everybody at the table.
So, yeah, just learning how does this change the family dynamic and like, you know, what issues may or may not crop up because they're homeschooled and what issues will we maybe not have to deal with because they're not, you know, being exposed as much to those things like in public school and stuff. So I don't know. It's kind of like I worry about that too. Like when's the teenage going to kick in where they're like, you're lame. I don't want to hang out with you anymore. But like you said, we're their group and that's what they're used to being with us all the time. So it's kind of like it's a different social thing.
And not that we don't socialize
Right.
in other ways, but for the most part, if they did say, all right, I'm done hanging out with you, they would be hanging out by themselves, right? In a way. So,
yeah, totally.
So how often do you guys solicit feedback from your kids? Like for example, me with my son, I used to go into his room every night, and my daughter too, and just kind of ask them how their day was. And I always got, fine, everything's good. And I would never get more than that. I mean, they would want to tell me the video game level they got to or what car they downloaded on their game or whatever. But I never got more beneath the surface. And so I started asking things like, hey, what was the hardest part of today? Like, what was the worst, you know, when did you feel the lowest or that, or even the highest, you know, that kind of thing. Then they kind of were forced to go a little bit deeper. But like, what kinds of questions do you think would most likely give you helpful feedback? Not that we're supposed to interview our kids every day, but.
No, I remember very specifically. I think even before we had kids, we did. It was one of these extracurricular courses through the church, and the pastor brought it up and said, when you talk to your kids at night, like don't just ask them, "Hey, how was your day?" Ask them very specifically, "What was the best part of today, and what was the worst part of today? What was the part that you hated the most, or that you didn't like the most?" And so I've done that more often than not, and. Most of the time they're kind of shallow answers, you know what I mean? They don't go really deep. I mean, I don't know if they have the ability to go super deep yet.
Yeah.
Sometimes they surprise me, you know. Sometimes they really surprise me and they get like, wow, that's a really wise response, you know. So I think that you're definitely on the right track. That's about where I go because It makes them think. You know?
My relationship with the kids, like, I'm just going to be honest, I'm pretty fried by the end of the day. So I don't I've never done that, I'll be honest. Like, it's more in the moment.
Yeah.
Or the kids initiate those conversations with me sometimes. Like, especially if we've had like a rough attitude day or something like that. Like our son, he is hardcore about his attitude in the moment. And then very shortly later, he really does realize, and he'll come and he'll give me a hug and he'll offer a couple explanations, not too deep, but, and then we'll be able to carry on a conversation. So I actually feel like for me personally, I don't know if it's just because I'm on mom mode to do lists all the time, but my kids initiate it with me more than I do with them.
And you saw their day in real time, right? Like, for the most part, right? So
True. Yeah.
like there are times when I come home and the kids are like wanting to bust mommy, like, hey, I did this and she did this and I'm right? You know, like that kind of thing. So a lot of times I'll go in and debrief with Jamie what kind of went down for the day before I hear their side of the story, you know. But that's happened quite a few times lately.
I've been asked, my kids, like, something will happen and then they'll see me texting and they're like, are you telling on me? And I'm like, well, daddy is your parent too. So yes, we are talking about what just happened.
Yeah. I've also noticed, and I think I noticed this more working with like high school kids in ministry, but I've started to see our kids start to fall into this. Like, I've noticed that like there are certain questions they'll ask mom and dad that I feel like, no, you don't really need to know the answer to that. But aside from those few things where I feel like it's either above what they can grasp or just none of their business, aside from those things, I've put those things aside. I've realized if I start disclosing more and being a little more vulnerable about like I could tell them what sucked about my day. I could tell them like some of the stresses at work without, you know, overwhelming them. And I've noticed that the more that I'm able to do that kind of stuff, like they're more willing to kind of like meet me in the same place and also be a little more vulnerable. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but
I think that's part of our mental health journey a little bit too, right?
Yeah.
Like being able to understand ourselves better and communicate and not be so afraid, like, how do I put it? Not keep our kids in a bubble in that regard.
Yeah.
Because we're still learning how to handle our emotions, our feelings, our stresses.
sure.
And so we share that with them. I've told my kids that. I've told my daughter that, like, hey, I had a headache today and I got bad news today and I'm sorry I snapped at you because this, and sometimes we don't always hold our emotions in the way we should, you know, and I see something kind of spark in her eye, like, oh, like I'm not weird, I'm not bad.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Were you always that way, or was there a time where you felt like you didn't want your kids to see your weaknesses, like, or were you always open about them?
I think I communicate them better. If that, like, I just verbally, I can communicate them with words better now.
I don't think there was ever a problem with them seeing weakness, but maybe more of a problem of, like explaining or communicating why you're upset, what you want them to think about or
I think we're
understand.
Less afraid of what to offer them. Like you
Yeah.
said, we kind of categorize too. Like,
Yeah, I have to be careful about that one because I tend to overshare with most people in general, just based on whatever I've gone through. But so with the kids, I have definitely done that a few times, and they have probably been exposed to some things that they shouldn't have been, just through the course of my work and things that I've seen or done or whatever that I told them, and I probably should have shielded them a little more. On the other hand, I'm a little torn because I also don't want them to be so sheltered that they're unsure. Again, this comes up on my little date with our daughter. Something came up, and I don't even remember what it was, but I had to explain to her, some of those evils out there in the world. And I can't remember how it came up, but on the one hand, I don't think it scared her like I thought it would. She would just be scared of the world. She seemed to really understand why we are so serious about watching them and making sure they listen when we're out and not talking to strangers and things like that, or not going away with strangers, those sort of things. So I don't know. It's a balance for sure. I think finding that balance is a difficult thing.
I think we're working on finding the balance of not just sharing the information, but working through the information and how it makes you feel and how it makes them feel, and give them an opportunity to ask questions. I think we're still working on balancing that out.
Yeah. What about you guys?
Well, why don't you talk? I've been talking a lot, but is there anything you want to say? All right, I'll take that look as a no. Jamie's super outgoing, and like she's the extrovert in our marriage. If you haven't been able to tell, that's why she's got her back to the camera.
It's okay. He's covering
So
me.
how do we? Okay, so I'm gonna ask this question, and then I'll lead into it. So how do we find the balance between teaching them how to think versus teaching them what to think? Right? Like I used to think in my head, I used to picture like, okay, I'm gonna start with these like basic decision making skills with the kids, and it's gonna be kind of like teach them how to ride a bike. And at some point, I can like push and let go, and then now you're gonna make every right decision because they've kind of like learned with the basic level, and that's not it at all. Like that's not parenting at all. And I feel like it's looked more like lately like okay, they can balance on the bike themselves, but there's still going to be some decisions where I need to come alongside of them and coach them as we go, rather than just let them, because I want to know what they're thinking. I want to keep those lines of communication open even as they get older, but I don't want to foster dependence. I want them to be independent too, right? So I don't want them to I don't want to be so coddling that they're like, they can always fall back on like, well, Dad will get me out of this, or Mom will walk me through this, because at some point we're not going to be here, and I want them to start to gain more and more independence. And so, what do you think that looks like? Like, how do we allow space for them to be more independent, but at the same time be like an open line of communication?
Well, like just speaking physically as a mom, sometimes it's easier to just do things rather than have them do them. And I catch myself doing that a lot, like just cleaning up after something they should have cleaned up themselves. And I just do it because it's easier that way. But I keep reminding myself, like, they obviously need to learn to do those things on their own and to be responsible for their own stuff and their own messes and things like that to a degree. I mean, to what's age appropriate, but so yeah, just like not always jumping in and rescuing, but being there, to kind of oversee, but without doing everything for them. Like don't do their thinking for them, allow them to think, and then you can offer advice or guidance, but without telling them how they should feel about something or they should think about something.
And
I guess,
and for me that's hard. Like that's really hard for me, because I'm the type where I'm like, I know it's some of my past, but I feel like I don't want them to like suffer. I don't want them to have a hardship. I don't want them to get any sort of repercussions from a bad decision. That's a big deal. I want to jump in and prevent that, and I know that's not healthy for them, right? So that even though I know what's right, I'll admit it's a struggle for me to not want to be in prevention mode,
Sure.
to keep them away from that. So I'm still learning that for sure.
I think as they get older, at least for our kids, I feel like it gets easier to let them go out and kind of do things on their own, to run around the park further away from us or whatever, because they can handle themselves, right? I mean, my style, for right or wrong, has always been like I drop the hammer pretty quick, if they're not doing something they're supposed to be doing, I give them one chance, one chance, or it's probably more than that most of the time, but I'll go straight to
On a count of three.
Yeah.
One.
I'll go straight
1.5.
yeah, exactly. Straight to spanking, and honestly, I still do that. It's very rare when we do that, but
Okay, let's be clear though. We have pretty set rules on when a spanking occurs. It's not a for every little thing.
Yeah.
Or
Oh, you didn't
like
set
that.
the table. Whack. No,
Yeah,
it doesn't
no,
happen
no,
that
no,
way,
no.
but like I don't know, and I'd say we're pretty strict on some of that stuff, but at the same time,
I think our two things is consistency. Like we don't change the rules every day,
yeah,
but we also ask questions on like the fourth time they've broken a rule that day. Like, don't tilt your chair back at the dime, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Safety wise or otherwise. When they either finally get hurt or, when I'm tired of mentioning something, it's, okay, do you understand why we're telling you to do that? What do you think can happen? And finally, like asking them questions to think through the end result, not just be stuck in their like, oh, but I want to, like mindset,
Right.
And so, yeah, but sometimes the opportunity for those questions don't happen till after the problem occurs or the very thing you were trying to prevent occurs. And so it's kind of hard to decide sometimes on when to step in beforehand and when to just let the repercussion happen.
Do you ever feel like the consequences should like be different for every kid? Or, I mean, the rules got to be the same, right? But does it always feel like you should be applying the same, like,
No.
repercussions for every kid?
I was going to say between son and daughter are older too. Like, for like around our daughter's age right now, our son was a lot more emotional, and like a timeout in his room to really think about things
he responded differently.
He responded to that. Our daughter, not as much.
Yeah, so it's,
like timeout, like she'll literally like, she's kind of in the mode of I'm like, no screen time till the week. Okay, fine, I don't care. And I'm like,
dang it, that didn't
so
work.
we kind of had to adjust a little bit on.
Oh yeah, no, the punishment is different, but the consistency comes from the crime, right? Like,
the rule. Yeah, the rule. No,
you
the rule
disrespect.
is the same.
For me, it's if you
The severity's the
disrespect your
same.
mom, there's a big problem with that.
Sure.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
If you did something
to harm someone else.
Yeah, to harm someone else. That's when those things come, right? But yeah, the punishment is different for each one because they respond differently to each one, right?
Yeah.
And they have different things that they value.
Right.
So
Exactly.
you have to, I mean, so you really can't have the exact same punishment for each child because it's not going to work.
With
the
our
same
daughter,
way.
to be like, all right, extra vegetables. She'd be like, yes. And you're like, wait, her son would have cried himself to sleep without
See,
me.
we have had this discussion so many times. He threatens vegetables as a punishment on a regular
I'm telling
basis.
you, I
And
don't
I'm
know.
like,
I don't care what denomination you are. Onions were not in the garden before the fall. I'm just going to put it out there. I don't care
mean,
what your beliefs are.
He's always joking when
That's
he
a
does it,
post-
but
Do you
I'm
not
like,
get onions
Sir,
at
I'm
dinner?
That's a
not.
post-sinful
Sorry, Jamie.
vegetable.
it's a negative association.
Part of the fallen world.
We don't want them
Yeah,
to
they're gonna hate them when they grow up.
associate
All
negative-
green food. Do you not get onions at In-N-Out? What's wrong with you?
I could do grilled onions if it forced me, but I'd rather not. Anyway, sorry.
I think too. Sometimes it's I know. Well, obviously, as parents in general, we can let our anger get the best of us, and sometimes the crime really was not as bad as it seemed, And so we tried to do the rule of like send them to their room for a little bit first before we just drop the hammer because we got to process sometimes. And I've seen like Jim, for example, like totally angry at a moment, and then he goes in to go talk to whoever it is, and then they come out and they're like laughing and joking because he kind of realized like, okay, that was a moment that didn't require that, you know what I mean? And
on that same token, I think one of the big things too is we've kind of made it a point. Like there have been times where I've flipped my lid for like way over the top, totally unnecessary for whatever was going on. Maybe I misunderstood something. So we kind of make it a point where I'll own up to that and apologize to the kids, for whatever. Like, hey, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. You were right, I was wrong, or whatever it is. And that seems to like open up some trust and communication, things like that.
Cool time for talk about grace and forgiveness, and all that kind of thing. So we both do have a daughter, and I want to mention one more thing, and then I think I'm going to shut up and let the girls talk because I think they could have more insight on this. But one thing we should mention is there are hormones that come into play sometimes that guys can't relate to very much. And I know part of me feels like, okay, let me give you part of me feels like if I make a caveat for my daughter's emotions that she has a hard time controlling because she's getting older and those kind of things start happening, it's not fair to my son, right? That I give her like a get out of jail free card because. So part of me feels like that, Jim. Okay, I'm just gonna put it out there. But
Jim's giving the stink eye.
I do know that hormones happen sometimes, and I'll give you a quick example. Like when we were early married, Jamie was on some birth control, and I only bring this up to say the Jamie that I proposed to and married was not the Jamie on birth control, and it took us a while to figure that out, and it turned out it was hormone related. And the doctor was like, "There's a billion other ones. Why don't we just try another one?" And I'm like, "Oh, she kicked me out of the house already." What? Okay, I'm exaggerating to make a point, but it was. And so I know that hormones can make people say and do and act in a way that they may not have preferred. So I'll let you guys speak to that. But that's something that we're going to have to embrace and come across as we raise daughters as they get older. And it's a bridge we got to cross, right?
Yeah. And I remind myself of that regularly, that there's a learning curve. When the hormones kick in, I remember distinctly, if I think back to those days, like I remember hearing things come out of my mouth that I was like, why would you say that? Like, what is your problem right now? And I didn't even understand what my problem was. So there's a learning curve for dealing with those hormones. So I do try to like have that grace a little bit. I mean, not to let her get away with things, but to sometimes I will say, okay, let's try saying that again in a nicer tone or something like that. Like give her a reshot to like redo whatever, because there's a lot of like disrespect that's starting to come up. And so I will call her attention to that, and then, without anger, let her try it again, letting her know that was not appropriate or whatever, because I do remember that there was, I mean, you got to learn how to tame your own beast. Like it just, sometimes it gets the best of you and you don't even know how to deal with it yourself. So
I don't believe in telekinesis, but I can tell you what Jim's thinking right now. But is there something you want to add to that? Because it really is hard for us to relate, and I feel like we should shut up and let you guys share about maybe how to get through that. Because
what? Why are you looking at me like that?
Well, my daughter's not quite there yet. She's just emotional anyway, so
Right.
Yay for when that comes around. But I'm still working on that myself, so I'm just going to admit that right there. And when I'm in that moment, I feel completely validated. And then a week later, I'm like, oh, man.
okay.
I'm still...
So how would we approach that with kids?
Well, I think right now, even in her more emotional / dramatic moments, I'm just trying to, once again, go back to like the questions, to the... I understand when sometimes we feel so like our emotions get the best of us and things like that. It's just kind of talking her through it a little bit, because we can talk to ourselves out of it all day long, but it doesn't always change what you're really feeling. And sometimes those feelings just drive you. So, yeah, I'll let you know when we get there, and we're going to probably figure it out together. So there you go. Yay for the boys. Sorry, love you.
Thank you for listening to the Family Brew podcast. Where can they find us at?
Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
And what should they do when they get there?
Follow us.
And what else can they do when they get there?
They can suggest new coffee flavors and suggest new ideas for new episodes, because we're going to have a new topic every week.